and we have started a new recording, and this recording is only in English. Hoera. Als je denkt dat je met grammatica al dingen geleerd hebt. Wat dacht je dan? Oh. Yes, sir. Let me... Oh, wat is dit nou weer? Jongen, jongen. Er gebeurt hier ook van alles in dit huis. Kunnen we allemaal uit de opname wissen, gelukkig. Zo. He. Let there be light. All right. Last session, we discussed from chapter 7 the definitions, the noun, the gender flip, and the dual. And now we're going to continue with the next 3 modules. And if you want to see that in your book, it's on page 72. Don't know if you can see it. Paragraph 7.2, sentences. 7.3, coordinating conjunction. So he is going to talk about the order of words in a sentence. And that's why we like the Dutch grammar, because we now learn how to differentiate and to understand the difference between a verb and the subject and the object and the article. And all these terms we know help us to understand better when you learn them in your own language, and then you can better understand what it is in the Hebrew. There are some. Let's go to sentences. Let's make this big. I'm limping on 2 thoughts. I don't know if you can say that, but it's Tuesday the 29th of how do you say that? September. Yeah. And we go to the module sentences with our friend Charles. I will maybe sometime put the pause button to make it able for you to ask a question, or if I want to share something about the lesson. So if you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. I can see that maybe. Leonard, can you try that for me? Can you raise your hand? No, not that one. The electronic one. Go to participants or chat. What is it?
Reactions.
Oh, where is it now? Wow. Okay. Yeah, you can raise your hands. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah. I put you over here. I can see it now. All right. Sentences. Charles is going to talk about sentences and how the order of words in sentences are.
Sentences. Okay, this is our first module that explicitly deals with syntax, at least that I can recall. And so we want to look at how sentences function in Hebrew. We have 2 types. The first type, the less common one, are nominal sentences. Nominal, meaning they're made up of nouns. No verb, no explicit verb. And so let me write one down. HaMelech, HaMelech, the king, Al Hasus, Okay, we know Zeus, right? Zeus is horse. This is the definite article. So, Hamelech al Zeus. There's no verb there. Literally, it's just the king on the horse.
Okay. Does anybody see a little small mistake he's making? From one of the lessons. So, what are the parts of an article? There are three parts. Anybody? Do you remember the three parts of an article?
Het streepje eronder,
Now the first part is the he.
de he, en dan het streepje eronder en de punt.
The second part is the betag.
Ja,
And the third part is the dagesh forte.
ja.
So what he's missing here is this one.
Ah, oké.
So you get has, sus.
Yeah.
Two S's. If you go to your book, you can see it correctly. I do this to remind all what we've learned before the break, because it goes away if you don't see and practice it. Okay, I'm now going to erase all these notes. Ta-da. And let Charles continue. That's flats. Okay, stop, annotate. Oh.
And so you just supply the verb. The king is on the horse. Supply it when you're speaking English, when you're translating. Another example would be me. Me. Oops, what am I doing? Forgot how to do my letters. Me. Tzaddik. Me means who. Tzaddik. Tzaddik is righteous. So this is the question, who is righteous? You just apply the verb there. So you can take a noun and a prepositional phrase and make a sentence, or you can take a noun and adjective, and just putting them together will form a nominal sentence. The verb is assumed. The normal way, however, that you make sentences in Hebrew is with verbs. So verbal sentences. I guess I should write that down to be complete. Verbal. Now, unlike English, the basic word order in Hebrew is VSO. Verb, subject, object. First are the verb, then the subject, then the object. In English, it's subject first, and then the verb, and then the object, right? The cat ate the mouse. First you mention the subject, generally, the cat, and then you mention the verb, ate, what? The object, the mouse. In Hebrew, you start with the verb. So let's look at an example. Have halach. That's to walk. In this case, it's he walked, masculine singular form. Halach. Hamelech. Do I put it? Yes, I do. The dagesh is from here, right? Hamelech. Hamelech. Halach Hamelech Bagan. If I have room here, should have left myself more space. Bagan means in the garden. Gan is garden. Ba is the inseparable preposition. In. It's supposed to be a word break here. So, literally, he walked the king in the garden. And we know it's a definite just by way of review. We know this is the garden, right? Because we have this and this from the article. And the b is the only thing that isn't part of the article. Remember, if we have an article and we add an inseparable preposition, if I can get that out, then we just replace the hey with the b. So we know this is the garden, not a garden. Anyway, that's just by way of review. So literally, he walked the king in the garden, but it doesn't mean that someone walked with the king or to the king. The subject is following. So we have V, S, O, generally, in Hebrew. Here's the verb, then look for the subject after it. So in English, you would say, the king walked in the garden. It's important to keep that straight. Very basic thing. Now, if you have Greek, if you have some knowledge of Greek or German or Russian, some other languages, they will have case endings. There are no case endings in Hebrew, at least.
Weet jullie wat een case ending is? Een naamvalsuitgang. Naamvallen zijn in het Nederlands een beetje ondergesneeuwd. Maar in het Duits heb je bijvoorbeeld 4 naamvallen. En er zijn talen zelfs met 8 naamvallen. Ik geloof dat Russisch is nogal uitgebreid in de naamvallen. Wij gebruiken dat niet zo. Maar je krijgt het bijvoorbeeld de vrouw des huizes. Dan zie je aan het einde van de zin, aan het einde van het woord, zie je er iets aan toevoegen. Niet de vrouw van het huis, maar des huizes van de, of van het, wordt bijgevoegd. Ja? Wordt bij elkaar gevoegd. Dus een naamvallen is in het Engels anders dan, en in het Hebreeuws kent dus niet echt specifieke naamvallen, maar zullen later nog behandeld worden. En in de paragraaf worden allerlei vormen van naamvallen gebruikt. Maar in het Nederlands heb je bijvoorbeeld wel de eerste naamval en de tweede naamval en de derde naamval. Maar ik weet niet of er nog meer naamvallen zijn. Ik wil het niet al te ingewikkeld maken, maar het is goed om te begrijpen waar dit over heeft. Case endings heeft dus te maken met naam. Oh, I need to speak Dutch. English. Oh. Case endings have to do with naamvallen. I'm sorry. I was talking to my Dutch fans. Sorry, amens. There we go.
Not anymore, not in Biblical Hebrew. No case endings. If you haven't taken these other languages, don't know them, you probably won't know what I'm talking about. But I can introduce you to it. Case endings are when you take nouns and pronouns and you add things to the end to mark whether it's the subject or the object, to mark its function in the sentence. Hebrew doesn't have that. So Hebrew, like English, has to rely on word order and relationship to other words in order to determine how the noun is functioning in the sentence. It's fairly intuitive. For English speakers especially, we're kind of used to making sure we have a fixed word order. If we change the word order, there are reasons for that. Anyway, so we have 2 types of sentences. We have nominal sentences with no verbs. Verb is implied. You just juxtapose a noun and a prepositional phrase. Use a prepositional phrase or a noun and adjective. Much more commonly, however, we have verbal sentences, and the default order is verb, subject, object, or in the Hebrew, direction. VSO, verb, subject, object.
For our Dutch friends, verb is werkwoord, subject is onderwerp en object is leidend voorwerp. The cat ate the mouse. The cat is the subject. Ate is the form of the personal form of the verb, and the mouse is that what has been eaten. Okay? Any questions about this section? It's very straightforward. 2 kinds of sentences, the nominal and the verbal, and in the verbal sentence you have a verb. That's why it's called verbal. I think you already understood that. Okay. Ta-da! Now we go to quite a lengthy module, and that has to do with the coordinating conjunction. It sounds difficult, but in Dutch it's het voegwoord. Daar gaat het over. Oh. Make it a little bit bigger. This is a long session, guys. So maybe I need to stop it. It's 19 minutes. It's very long, but it's very straightforward. And it might help you better understand what's going on with the vav.
The coordinating conjunction. The coordinating conjunction in Hebrew is the vav. I think I've mentioned this, at least in passing. Generally, it's vav followed by a vocal shava. And in some ways, it behaves like the inseparable prepositions. Le, b, and ke. One of the ways that that the vav behaves like these, is that it attaches directly to the word that follows it. It doesn't stand by itself. So, for instance, we have a word like davar, which actually means word. At least that's one of the uses. It can also mean a thing or a matter, some things that have happened. In any case, if you add v to it, you just add it on. V. Just like you would with these. You just add it on. Actually, what happens here is it. It's just a minor point, which is according to rules. I'll get rid of it here. Let's delete it. You lose it because there's a vocal shava.
Ronald, we horen niks meer.
The tiniest vowel, this vocal shava is enough to scare away Dagash.
Hallo?
Dagash Leni is in here because this is a Begat Kafat letter. You can go back to the previous models if you've forgotten about that. So Davara becomes.
Okay. We got kafat letters. Do we remember them? Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Kaf, Pe, and Taf. Begat kafat. These letters can have a dot, and when the dot is there, it changes the pronunciation. So in these letters, begat kafat, the pronunciation changes when there is this dagesh in it. And because it changes only the pronunciation and doesn't double, it's called the dagesh lene, or the weak dagesh. And what he's saying here, that if you have a dagesh lene and you have before the word, the letter with the dagesh lene, a vowel, even the smallest of vowels, it chases away the dagesh lene. And that's what he's talking about here.
Just add it on. So that's how it's similar. It's a little different though if there is an article there.
Ronald, we horen hem niet.
Oh, sorry.
So let's put.
Dat was net ook al zo hoor.
Davar.
Okay, so better?
Yeah.
If we added an inseparable preposition to that,
Sorry.
we would exchange the hey with one of that's
Let's
how
go
it's similar.
back.
And any vowel, remember, even the tiniest vowel, this vocal shava is enough to skip, which is according to Aru, so I'll get rid of it here. Let's delete it. You lose it because there's a vocal shava, and any vowel, remember, even the tiniest vowel, this vocal shava is enough to scare away Dagash Lene. Dagash Lene is in here because this is a Begat Kafat letter. You can go back to the previous models if you've forgotten about that. So Davar becomes V'davar. Just add it on. So that's how it's similar. It's a little different though if there is an article there. If you had a hey there, so let's put ha davar. If we added an inseparable preposition to that, we would exchange the hey with one of these consonants, right? If we add the coordinating conjunction, we just add it straight on, v. It does not replace the hey. So in that way it's different. In any case, the first...
Okay, just to remember, when you have an inseparable preposition, le, be, or que, and you prefix it before an article, then the hey disappears and the inseparable preposition moves one step to the left and keeps the petach. Remember? It's just a kind of review. So when you have le, be, or que, and you have an article there, it will not become be, ha, davar. It would become badavar in the word. Not so the hey disappears and the shava disappears. Do I need to write it out? Because I see you glancing at me. Okay. Let's take this word. If you make it like this, be, if you get hadavar plus be and be, what you get is badavar. Oh, not that one. That one. Badavar. So an inseparable preposition like this plus an article, the hey disappears and the inseparable preposition moves to the left and becomes again the first word. So you get badavar. But what he says here, over here, you see that the vav is still there and the hey, the article, is still there. So, oh, the article is still there. So when you have v'hadavar and the word, this is and a word, this is and the word. Remember? Okay. Let's erase this. Ta-da. Let's continue.
The thing I want to look at here is the vav normally looks like this. It's the normal way it looks. But there are some other ways that it can show up. The second is that it follows the second rule of shava, which you've seen, and so you have different vowels that can show up under the vav. Now the second rule of shava, if you remember, is if you have a compound shava, like that, like the chataf patach, preceded by a vocal shava, then what happens? Do you remember? This one is going to change to the short vowel corresponding to the compound shava in question. So you'll get a patach in your chataf patach. Now if this were chataf sagol, you would get a sagol. If this were chataf kametz, you would get a kametz hatuf. So if you have a...
Let's draw that out because he's talking very quickly. If you get a chataf sagol, you will get this. And if you would get this one, you would get this one. So if this is the letter, and you would have a shava and this one, the compound shava, what changes? This is the petach. This first shava, the first shava, changes to the corresponding vowel. So the first shava changes to the corresponding vowel. So when you would have a sagol here, a sagol, chataf sagol and chataf patach, then it would change here. You see it here, a sagol. So this shava changes to sagol when there is a sagol here, and this shava changes to a kametz hatuf when the T sound, the O sound.
word like chamor, which is donkey, and you add a v on it, what happens? You add a v, the v here changes, or the vocal shava, I'll just delete that. That is going to go to that. So instead of v chamor, it's vachamor. Okay, no problem. If you had emet, look at least one more here. Met means truth. I think it's another, yeah, emet. If you add a vav, instead of being pointed with a shava, it is a segol. And one more, just to complete the possibilities. This is the chataf patach. So chali means sickness. If we add a vav to it, the coordinating conjunction, we don't have the shava. We have the vowel that corresponds to this, which is the chataf, the kametatuf. Sorry, this is the chataf patach. This is the kametatuf. So vo chali, and sickness. So vachamor ve'emet vochali, vochali, perhaps you just say. So you see three different ways that this can show up, with a patach, with a segol, with a kametatuf. But they all follow the rule, the second rule of shava, faithfully. So it's not odd in terms of what we would expect. Now again, like these inseparable prepositions, if you have Elohim, if you remember Elohim had a chataf segol.
Okay, let's pause here. Any questions? What he is explaining, we had all these rules in the previous modules, the rule of Shava and this one, where things change when you put words before it, like bulle, akkoord, then it happens. And what he explains, what happens when you put, let's use the annotate. When you use the coordinating conjunction, het voegwoord, when you add it to a word that is here, and the word has these kinds of vowels, what happens with the shava that is over here? And in the previous page, he showed what happens when there is an article there, and now he's talking about this rule where normally this first shava disappears and it becomes the vowel corresponding to the vowel over here. So that's what he's doing over here. And Anki, this is an O sound, but because it is at the beginning of a word, it becomes an A sound. And this with the dots. And now this is vacholi. Vochali, I mean, wo. So this is still the O sound, and it's pronounced vochali. And you can find it in one of the earlier sessions, what happens to this one. Let's continue. Now he's going to talk about Elohim and about quiescence letters.
Elohim, if I can squeeze it in here. Elohim, if we add v to it, if you add lamed to it, you get le-lohim. Remember? And it was because it followed the second rule of shava, so this changed, and then aleph quiesced, so it lost its vowel, and because it's aleph, the third step was that the previous vowel lengthened. And it lengthened from the segol to the tzere. Go back to the quiescent module if you forget that. Anyway, if you have the coordinating conjunction, which starts out as v, it also will go through exactly the same steps, and you end up with ve. This is gone because of quiescence. So velohim. So the vav here is functioning exactly like the inseparable prepositions. Let's take a look at what happens, the third case here. What happens with the first rule of Shava. Now, the first rule of Shava, if you remember, is what it talks about what happens when you have two vocal Shavas at the beginning of a word. And what happens is the first one changes to a Hedek, correct? And the second one goes silent. So this becomes this. Now, the Vav, the coordinating conjunction, will follow this rule if what we have here is a Yud. If you have a Yud, then it will follow it here. And the second step that happens is the Yud quiesces. So let's put Q for quiescent here. And so it loses, if it quiesces, it loses its vowel, and you end up with V. So your Vav would be here. Vav, Vav, Vav. So before a Yud with a vocal Shava, before Y, you get V. It changes to V. And this is consistent again with what we saw with the inseparable prepositions. If you remember, Yehuda became Vihuda. Let me just write, what should I do here? Well, let's write it out, I guess. At least the beginning and the end states. Yehuda. We add V. And what happens is this one changes to a Hedek. Well, let's write the final state. This changes to a Hedek, and then this quiesces, so it loses this. You end up with that. So you end up with V, Huda. Again, if you want to know the details here, go back to the lesson on quiescence, quiescent letters. Okay, that's the third case. The fourth case, and I'll summarize this all at the end, don't worry. The fourth case is that what happens with the when you have two vocal Shavas?
Any questions? All clear? No questions? Okay.
But the consonant here is something other than Yud. Well, something a little different. It does not follow the rule of Shava. The rule of Shava is not followed. Instead, it goes to U. The Vav goes to U, so it sounds different. So that's when you have anything here other than Yud. Let's look at an example. Let's look at Shemuel. Okay. I'll write this bigger. Maybe it won't be so sloppy then. Okay. Mu, and then we have an aleph, il. Shemuel. If we add v here, we have a case, we have two vocal Shavas, but it does not follow the rule of Shava because it will only follow the first rule of Shava if this consonant were a Yud. And then we get V, just like we saw in the previous case. Instead, what we get is U. This guy changes to U. So, let's get rid of this. And let's put our U in there. So we get Ushmuel. Okay? Similarly, if we have a word, let's take a look at Devarim. Devarim. It's supposed to be an comments there. Deva. Mercy. Devarim. Okay, Devarim. We add a V there. What's going to happen? Well, it's not going to obey the rule of Shava. Instead, we're going to get U. And so we get U. Now, the Dagash Lene is going to disappear because we have a vowel before it. So if you have a Dagash Lene, this is just the rules of Dagash Lenes. They tend to take off. Well, they do take off. They disappear if there's any vowel before it, even the smallest of vowels. And U is certainly a vowel. Now this is the one case, if you remember early on I said there's one case where a word in Hebrew will start with a vowel. This is the only case. Otherwise you always have to have syllables, therefore words, have to be either CV or CVC. Right? You can't get VC. This is the only case. The case where you get U. So it's a little different. Exception that way. So that's what happens when, with all the other cases of first rule of Shiva. If you have anything other than a yud, it'll go to u, yud followed by vocal Shiva. Now there's another case, we'll call this A, where you get the same result.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, let's new share. Let's have a look at some examples. Maybe that will help you. Let's have a look here. And a little bit bigger. Okay. Let's pause here. What you see here, this is Genesis 1. And it's maybe I shared this earlier, but in Genesis 1, except for verse 1, that's the exception. This is a bait. All the other verses start with a vav. Oh, let's have a look at it. Verse 2. V'haaretz, verse 3. Vayomer, verse 4. Vaya, verse 5. Vayikra, verse 6. Vayomer, verse 7. Vayaas, verse 8. Vayikra, verse 9. Vayomer, verse 10. Vayikra, verse 11. Vayomer. So what you see, it's not, I can continue. Here's Vatose, verse 13. Vayhi, Vayomer, Vahayu, Vayaas, Vayiten, Velimsol, verse 18, verse 19, Vehi, verse 20, Vayomer, it continues, Vayibra, verse 22, Vaybarek, 24, Vayomer. You see all these words start with a Vav, and most of them start with a Vav and a Petach. And here is one, interesting, that's what he's talking about. Here is one. Do you see the word? That's not the beginning, but you can see the U sound. Ubeof. And over the birds. Of is bird. This is the inseparable preposition be, and this becomes an U. So here you have the, be. That is what the original was, and then of. So this two Shavas become, this one becomes an U and not a V. That is the example he was showing us. So in all these words, somebody talking to me? Ah, okay. So created and blessed. So it continues all the way up to chapter 2, but all these verses start with a Vav. And most of them start with a Vav and a Petach. I was over here.
For B, it's for A, this is for B. If you have a labial, if vav precedes a labial letter, which are the labial letters are m, b, and p. M, b, and p. And in one textbook, this one by Rebecca Wright, Vicky Hoffer, and Bonnie Kittle, page 248, they mention a nice little mnemonic. They call these the bump letters. B-U-M-P. So that's one way to remember them. The bump letters. If you have a vav before any of these, it also goes to U. So, let's look at some examples of those. Bayit. Bayit. You put vav before it, you get U. And again, it chases this away. If you have a dagesh leni, it's going to disappear. So, we'll get rid of it. Uvayit. Bayit becomes uvayit. Moshe. Moshe is Moses. Mo. Now, one thing to note here. Let me finish the word here. In printed texts, you often have only one dot. If you have a holum followed by a sheen, they won't put two dots. You can have two dots if you want, but don't be surprised if there's only one dot there. One dot will play both functions, the holum and the sheen dot. Anyway, if you add vav on there, you get u. So, u Moshe. And let's take a look at the third one here. Petach, meaning door. Petach. Stress is there. Again, it's a labial, and so you get u petach. Actually, it was also, this is Begat Kafat letter, right? Pe. And so it, by itself, without this, it would have had the dagesh leni just like this one did. And then we lose it when you put the vowel on. So, okay, now the last case, case number 5. And don't worry, I'm going to review this, so it won't be so difficult once you see the review. Vav before a tone syllable, especially with paired words, will sometimes go va. Let's look at an example of this. How about tov? Good. Tov vara. Okay, this is the tone syllable because there is only one, so obviously it's a tone syllable. And this means good and evil. So there are words that exist as a pair. And in that kind of situation, you often get va. So good and evil. Or you have something like yom. Yom, and then you'll have va. Laila. Laila means night. Yom is day. La. So again, both conditions are met. This here is supposed to be note the accent or the stress. Both conditions are met because it's the first syllable that is stressed. This happens when the vav precedes a tone syllable, so it has to be the first syllable, either monosyllabic or the stress has to be at the beginning, and the two words have to be some sort of pair. So, good and evil, day and night. Or vachoshek would be another one. Light and darkness. So or is light. Supposed to be a resh. Or va. And choshech. Again, stress is there. Cho. This time I'll just put one dot because you have a sheen with a holum. We'll just do one dot. Choshech. or vachoshech. So again, both conditions, vav immediately preceding a tone syllable and a paired word, light and darkness. So that's the fifth condition. The fifth state or fifth case. Okay, let's review. Summary. 1, vav normally shows up like this. V is just vav with a shava under it. 2, before a compound shava, it takes the corresponding short vowel. So, before this, you would have that. Before that, you would have that. And before chataf patach, you would have the kametz hatuf. The chataf kametz, you'd have the kametz hatuf. If I said chataf patach before, earlier in this module, I don't remember, I meant chataf, or I should have said chataf kametz in the kametz hatuf. And this, of course, is the second rule of Shava. So, you can take these forms. And try to squeeze everything on here. Before y, vav becomes v. That's the first rule of Shava, followed by quiescence of the yud. Okay? 4, before a Shava, in other words, anything else, we'll just do this to denote any consonant, followed by local Shava, anything other than this one, and the bump letters, labials, oops, let's make capital M, before a Shava, except this, and the labials, you get U. And then the fifth case is before a tone syllable, has to be a tone syllable, immediately before a tone syllable, and a paired, some sort of pair, or in some sort of pair, before a tone syllable, in between two words that are some sort of pair, you get va, as in good and evil. So there's your summary. You've got v, you've got these three, which follow your compound shavas. We have v, we have u, and we have va. It looks, now this, by the way, is your kametz hatuf. A lot of different things. But I think in reading, it really won't throw you that much, because you'll see a word and you'll see this vav with some sort of vowel under it. In most cases, it's simply v.
Okay. This was a lengthy lesson, and it might be good to review it the coming week, because I think it's important to understand the different forms of how the vav is used, and it also gives you a short review of all the rules we have discussed, like the rule of Shava, quiescent letters, inseparable prepositions, and the article. And all those rules have been maybe gone away a little bit in the swamp of forgetfulness before the break. But that's why I try to repeat and pause to talk about stuff in order to help you understand and pick it up again. I still don't know why in the first chapter of Genesis, the vav becomes va, like over here. Oh, let's annotate. Let's go de-annotate. It's always better. It becomes va, vayomer. So it's from vayomer, and all these, most of them, vehi, and the vehi erev, vehi boker, yom echad. Vayomer Elohim yehi rakia betok hamayim vihi and let. So here you have one of the examples where it becomes vihi and not vehi. So when you study Genesis 1 and you try to find out why is there a petach, or why is there a chirek, or why is there another letter when there is a shava, so why is that? Because it should be explained with the help of this lesson. Okay, De vertellende vorm, the narrative, yeah. Okay, this was an important lesson, I think, about the coordinating conjunction. And oh my gosh, my battery is going down. The next lesson will be, let's have a look. Where are you? We had that one, quiescent lessons, coordinating conjunction is gone. Sentences is gone. Where are you? Yeah, there we are. Translating the conjunction, that is telling us about how do you translate? There are different forms to translate. So that is the last. And then we have already done the first chapter in the new module. And I hope you continue. Any questions, please ask them. And we do this together. Do your exercises, it helps you. And I thank you all for participating and see you next week. And let me know if you want to have the grammar lessons on another day or if it's still okay. I can imagine it's a little bit much, but if you want to do the grammar lesson on a Monday or a Wednesday or Friday, it's fine with me. Let me know, okay? Thank you very much. God bless you all. Shalom. And it's Yom Kippur today, I think, started. Or bye-bye.